This has got to be the ultimate Halloween prop. But before I review it, I just want to put a disclaimer out there. If you are big into Halloween, like a lot of people are, but have never flown a quadcopter, then do not buy this, or at least buy a micro quadcopter and learn how to fly it before flying this, because this is a dangerous model. Even though it's got brushed motors and gears, it's got a fair amount of power, and it's quite big, as you can see here as well. But if you are into Halloween and are an intermediate quadcopter flyer, then this thing is just brilliant. I first received this and thought, this is a bit gimmicky, it's not going to work, and then I flew it and I had so much fun with it. So what is it? Well, it's basically a V262 with a skull on the top, with a cloak, and you've got some arms at the side there, and there's an LED in the skull. It shines green. Now, there's no other LEDs in the arms, which I thought wouldn't work. However, there's LEDs underneath the quadcopter that shine down and they light up this entire cloak, and it looks just absolutely brilliant. Now, you don't get a lot with it. There's no camera. It literally is just a quadcopter. But let's talk through the things that you do get. So you get the propellers, of course, and I'll talk about those in a bit. You get a spare set of propellers, which is nice. You get a screwdriver. You get some spare screws for the propellers, you get a charger, and you get a battery. Now, the battery is installed in this. Pardon me, missus. You have to lift up the cloak to see the battery. And it's a 2-cell battery, and it is 850 milliamps. So you're going to get a decent flight time out of this because it's not very heavy. And you get given the transmitter, so it's this Halloween style transmitter. Now, I mentioned earlier that it looks like a V262, but it doesn't bind to a V262 transmitter. That doesn't matter though, because this transmitter does all you need. So it comes in mode 2. As I said, there's no altitude hold, so you've got the throttle that's not spring loaded there. We have got these buttons here that I didn't really touch, so this button doesn't do anything. You have got one key return and a headless mode, which might be useful in the dark, but I wouldn't recommend using it. I would say maybe headless mode was useful in the dark, because if you haven't flown in the dark before, then it can be quite tricky. See, all you're going to see is the ghost. You're not going to see the propellers, and that can make it pretty tricky to fly. So we have a low rate, a medium rate, and a high rate, and that is changed by using the throttle trim. All of the others are for the actual trims. This button here actually makes the LED flash for a few seconds, and then it comes back on solid. This one doesn't do anything. So pretty simple controls, but it's really effective. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about is how it was packaged. Not so much how it was packaged, but these propellers here aren't on in the box because it doesn't fit, which is fair enough. However, the propellers fit onto the frame with these screws. Now, the propellers were not on, but the screws were, and they were cross-threaded. I tried to unscrew them with the screwdriver that's provided, and it ruined the thread on all of the screws. In fact, they wouldn't come out. I had to use a pair of pliers and yank them out and then use the spare screws that it comes with. Now, another problem that I had was that the screws don't go into the props very well. In fact, you see this blood here? Not all of it is fake blood. In fact, this here, this is real blood. And this is real blood. I cut myself pretty bad on this. I mean, you can't really see it there. Now it's healed somewhat. But I was holding the propeller with my thumb like this, and then trying to screw this in, and that went straight into my finger. So you need to be really careful when putting these propellers on. It wasn't an easy job. I promise you, I probably spent about 40 minutes trying to get these propellers on. First removing the screws and then screwing them all back in. But once I did that and shed a little bit of blood, which I think, makes it more personal actually, it's meant to have blood on there, so I thought, oh, I'll wipe all the blood over it, why not? It was a lot of fun. Now you are given these as well. These are some spare gears in case you break these ones, but I didn't have a problem with it. The only thing that I will say though is you can see that when the quadcopter is flat, all of this material here bunches up. And if this gets caught in the propellers, then it's going to burn one of these motors out. Because as I mentioned, they are brushed motors, and any bit of tension on that is going to be amplified through the gears, and it's going to burn your motor out. So if you do get this thing, then make sure that all of the material is flat before you take off, and you won't have a problem. So speaking of takeoffs, let's go and have a fly of this outside and see how much fun it is. So it's not a very dignifying takeoff. I recommend that if you're going to be flying this on Halloween, make sure you take off at a point where no one can see it. But as soon as it's in the air, it looks really effective. I think it's brilliant. Now I found it really difficult to make some video of this because every time I would get it flying, people would crowd round it because it was so interesting, but I guess that's the point of it. But to make a video review, it's quite challenging. Now you can see the blue spotlight on the ground there. I did not expect the LEDs on the quadcopter's arms to be so effective, but they were. They light up the cloth perfectly, so we have got blue lights at the front and red lights at the back. And this quadcopter definitely works the best in pitch blackness. So I'm just flying it around here, just hovering it, and if you waggle the aileron, you can make the arms move about, which is pretty funny. Now, I'm just hovering it here, but it is most effective in forward flight. I'm going to show you that in a bit, but I'm going to just bump the exposure up of the camera so you can see what it's like in the street. And I'm going to check out those LED flashing options. So there's that top left hand shoulder button. If you press it, the LEDs flash just a couple of times and then the LEDs go solid. And I found that when you fly it up to people and press the LEDs, they really start to smile and laugh, which is what this thing is all about. Of course, make sure you're being safe. Don't fly it right up to people too close. And I'm flying in mode 2 here, which isn't my native mode, so I make sure that I gave myself a lot of space when people were crowding around this thing. So I am just flying into the darkness here. You can see that blue spotlight again is lighting up really nicely. You can sort of see some of the blood on the cloth as well. Again, that's the low light camera picking it up. Can't really see it so much with your eyes. So in a minute I'm going to do some forward flight, and that is where this thing is most effective. That's where it looks the best, I think, when it's flying forward. But just to show you what it looks like, I'm doing some hovering here. Of course, you need to fly nose in for the majority of the time if you want to get some camera footage of this. A lot of people get their mobile phones out when you're flying this as well to take a video of it. Now this is a maneuver that I like to do. Whichever subject you're flying towards, if it's yourself, just bring it back and then fly it forward, and it looks pretty cool, I thought. I just love how the material flutters in the airflow of the propellers. So I'm going to do some forward flight here now, and there's a little bit of flicker on the footage, and that is because the shutter speed of the camera has synced up with the lighting in the street and also in the houses. But I'm going to turn towards the street and do some forward flight in a minute, and you can see the arms waggling about there. And something that I like is in forward flight, the cloth pins itself backwards, just as you would expect a cloth to do on a real ghost, and I think it looks fantastic. I'm really surprised by this product because I thought it was a bit gimmicky, but when you get it in the air, it's a lot of fun, and I think on Halloween, it's going to be a showstopper for sure. Just look at the shadow there. I really like the shadow of it. It's like a ghostly shadow that it produces, and there's no cables or wires, and I think that gets people thinking quite a lot. Yeah, Really like this. It's going to be a keeper, and I'm going to be bringing it out on Halloween for a lot of fun. So there you go. That is my review of the Halloween drone from GearBest.com. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to buy it, and hopefully it turns up in time for Halloween. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.